For the last 80 years or so, the entire world has been playing by a very specific set of rules. It was a system that decided who built things, who bought things, and maybe most importantly, who was in charge of enforcing the whole game. Well, that era, it's over. We are literally watching the end of globalization as we've always known it.
And listen, that's not just some fringe idea from the sidelines. That's a direct quote, a major takeaway, coming out of the World Economic Forum. Even the global leaders are admitting that the old game just isn't working anymore. So that begs the big question.
Right. If the old world order is crumbling, what's going to replace it? And maybe more importantly, who's getting to write the new rules? To figure that out, we've got to dig a little deeper.
Okay, so to really get a grip on where we're going, we first have to understand the system that's falling apart right now. See, after World War II, the major world powers basically struck a deal. You could think of it as a kind of global division of labor.
And it pretty much worked like this. China stepped up to become the world's factory. Japan, by keeping its interest rates near zero, became the lender, keeping cash flowing through the system. Europe, well, it became the world's #1 consumer, basically trading its military power for social stability at home. And the United States? It took on the role of the enforcer for the whole shebang.
Now, the real engine behind all of this was something called the petrodollar system. And it was simple, really. If you wanted to buy oil or energy anywhere on the planet, you had to use US dollars to do it. This created this constant, massive global demand for the dollar. And if anyone tried to break the rules, the US military was right there to make sure they got back in line. If you played along, you got access to all these markets. If you didn't, you were looking at sanctions or even worse.
And for a really long time, this system kind of worked, at least on paper. But underneath the surface, some really deep cracks started to show up, both at home and across the world.
For people in the US, globalization was a very different story depending on who you were. If you are an investor, hey, you probably made a ton of money as American companies cashed in on cheap labor overseas. But if you were a factory worker, you saw your job disappear as plants closed down and supply chains moved halfway across the world. This whole process just hollowed out the middle class and made the country dangerously dependent on other nations.
So why is it all breaking down now? Well, the simple answer is that other nations got powerful enough to start pushing back. They've started forming their own alliances, and that old enforcement method, military power, is now so risky it could trigger a global conflict. And that's something nobody wants. So if the old game is over, that means a new one is just getting started. And in this new game, there are 4 major factions, 4 big players, all fighting for control. If you can understand them, you can start to understand what our future might look like.
All right, let's break them down. First, you've got the financialists. Think of them as transnational capital, huge asset managers, big banks. Then you have the sovereigns. These are the national leaders who care more about their own country's borders and resources. Next up are the technologists, the people actually building our digital world. And finally, you've got the enforcers. That's the military-industrial complex.
The financialists have this incredible power, and here's the crazy part. They don't even need laws to use it. Their influence comes from simply controlling the money. Take an asset manager like BlackRock. They manage trillions of dollars for their clients. Now, it's not their money, but they get to use it to vote on corporate boards. And get this, BlackRock's own data shows they cast 89% of their clients' votes, which gives them this enormous say in what happens at nearly every major corporation on the planet.
Now, standing in direct opposition to them are the sovereigns. We're talking about leaders like Russia's Putin or China's Xi Jinping. They see this kind of borderless globalization as a direct threat to their power. They'd much rather give up some market access if it means they get to control their own industry, their own energy, and their own security. They fight against that flow of transnational capital because, they understand that giving up control of the money means giving up control, period.
So we know who the players are, but the real question is, what do they want? What's their end game? Because each of these factions has a totally different vision for our future.
For the asset managers, the biggest fear in a deglobalized world is friction. Things like borders, different currencies, conflicting regulations, all that stuff slows down the movement of money. So what's their big solution? It's a concept called tokenization. The idea is to turn every real-world asset, stocks, bonds, even your house, into a digital token on a blockchain. If they can pull that off, they create a whole new system where money stays liquid, fast, and under their control, no matter what happens to national borders.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Inside that financialist camp, there's a kind of civil war brewing. The old guard, the central banks, are terrified of becoming obsolete. So their big idea is central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. But they're getting a huge fight from the crypto lobby, who just want a fair shot. I mean, think about it. If a crypto company can offer you a 5% yield on a digital currency, while your bank is offering you, what, 0.2%? Where are you going to put your money? This is a straight-up existential threat to the bank's power.
Okay, so let's just do a quick recap. The financialists, they want to control the new digital plumbing of money. The sovereigns, they want to control their physical land and resources. The technologists are the ones building the infrastructure for this new world, and while they might seem neutral, their control over data and code gives them a huge amount of power. And the enforcers? Well, their goal is to keep things just unstable enough to justify their massive budgets and make sure they have a key role in whatever new order comes next.
So now that we've laid out all the players and what they're after, let's get to the most critical takeaway from all of this. This isn't some simple story of good guys versus bad guys. It's about power fighting power. And the conflict we think we're seeing might not be the real conflict at all.
What if, and this is just a theory, the big picture moves have already been negotiated behind closed doors? What if all the conflicts we see splashed across the news are just geopolitical posturing? You know, political theater designed for us, the public, while the real deals have already been shaken on. The final script might not be written, but the general direction could already be set in stone.
We are watching a new global chessboard being set up right in front of our eyes. All the pieces are in motion, and all the old rules have been thrown out the window. The only question left is, who makes the next move, and who's going to be the one to win this new game?